This was her brainchild of what she's doing at classmates.com and the way she's trying to port this idea to Intellius. So please welcome Marlise and Libby. And Libby, kick us off with what you're doing doing at classmates.com.
Sure. So the slides Okay, perfect. So just to get started, People Connect, I am guaranteeing many of you in this room have not heard of that brand before because it hasn't been around very long. But we are the parent company to classmates.com. So if any of you have ever planned a reunion, looked at an online yearbook, if you went to high school, you may have heard about us. And Intellius.com, you may not have heard of us, but how many of you have ever done a reverse phone lookup? Got a number, didn't know? That's what we do. We do reverse phone lookup, people searches, background checks, all that good stuff. So about a year ago, our two brands were merged, our marketing departments were merged. And if you want to go to the next slide, I'm going to focus primarily on the Classmates brand today because that's where we kicked off our program with first. And I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, so if you have questions, oh good, you can ask me afterwards. So a little bit about our program. We have 21 years of email collection, UGC, and member interactions. We have a base of 70 million members that we try to email all 70 million members every 6 months, at least once, to keep our list clean. My team is responsible for more than 90% of our daily traffic to the site, so that is all traffic. Ooh, what happened there? Oh, there we go. And then we have 3 dedicated teams that are responsible for this. So the marketing managers all report into me, and then we have a team of back-end developers and a team of front-end developers. So where do I need to point this? There we go. Our daily challenge, though, is sending the right message to each member, but not going too far. So with 70 million members and all of that great content, we need to balance those who are highly engaged and hitting them frequently with email versus those who have maybe tapered off. And we have a really interesting problem is every 5 years something happens that automatically gets people back to our site. Anybody have a guess of what that might be? If you went to high school, you probably know what this is, or you might know. Every 5 years, what happens?
Reunions.
Reunions, yes. So every 5 years, we know people are going to want to re-engage with us, which is why we don't ever really knock anyone out of our program because we know in 5 more years they're probably going to want to come back again. And this is what our program looked like 5 years ago, or 4 years ago-ish when I started. It's a little hard to see, but it was incredibly complicated. All of the little colored blurbs represent on-site actions, and the envelopes are emails. It was all overlapping. It was not a very elegant system to maintain. And we went through kind of the standard model where every day we'd wake up and we'd say, what do we want to send today? Then who does it apply to? And who's actually eligible for an email? So a quick example of this is if someone joins the Seattle High School class of 2000, we want to tell the Seattle High School class of 2000 that, hey, Jen's now here. However, if Mary and Bob were also in that class and Mary already received an email today, we couldn't tell Mary about that because she got something else. And at each one of these steps, we had these big missed opportunities. We tried to get this information out to Mary with a later email, but it wasn't perfect, and we were finding that we were missing a lot of great opportunities. So about 2 years ago, my boss and I started thinking about what could we do differently? How could we handle this differently? And this is actually the logo for our proprietary customer-centric email engine. Thank you, legal, for that. Called Pegasus. And the idea behind the Pegasus system is it actually wakes up every morning at about 12:15, and it starts with who should we email today? Who needs to qualify for an email? Then we layer on top of that, what can we say? We have so much content, we always have something to say. My team is never short on things that they want to talk about. So then we apply the what we can say, and then we end up with the daily send. And what you'll notice is our daily send actually didn't change. In some ways it went smaller, but rather than missed opportunities, we take all of those people that may have missed an email before, and we turn that into queued inventory. And again, I know I'm going very fast through this, so every morning, all members, all 70 million members, are broken out into one of 8 segments. And I'm going to talk quickly through what those are. Oops. There we go. So you'll see it goes from 0 to 7. 0 is our new members. And then 7 are external complainers, so those are your spam complainers, and we put them in a very special category. And we have one key metric. When we first kicked this off, we had so many different ways that we wanted to segment. And what I would stress and focus on today is keeping that one key metric very clean, very simple, and something that you can always fall back on. That's the one place where we do not get complicated. We do not have a lot of rules. We keep it really simple, and for us, it's based on when did you last log into our site. All of our emails auto-authenticate into our site, and so it's a nice correlation between those two. And so we can kind of map that last login date to when did you last engage with an email. And then what we did, we took and we added on what our max frequency was. So for each one of those segments, we've determined what is the right amount of email for you to get from us. If you're highly engaged or you're a new member, you can qualify daily, but you'll notice those segments at the top are really small. You only live in those windows for a small period of time. And if you stop engaging with our emails, then we stop telling you or talking to you as frequently. And the flip side of that is, once you click through, if you're in segment 6 and you click through, you then pop back up into segment 1 again. So it allows for members to kind of determine their own email frequency, and they get to control their own email destiny. We don't have any of this on our preferences page. It's all something we do automatically with our system. So what do we say? When I was talking about what we call these queues of content, what we do is we take all of the actions that happen on our site, in an app, and during a conversion process, and we figure out what do we want to communicate about. And then we realize who should we tell. And so that was that concept of Jen joined the class of 2000. We want to tell the class of 2000 that Jen was here. We may also want to tell the class of 99 that Jen was here. And those are two different items that we can put into an individual's queue, and we can prioritize them separately. So for every single member, we create these unique queues of email-ready content. Obviously, not everybody has kind of the amount of data or the type of data that we do, but I'm going to wrap this up or hand it over to Marlise with a couple of things where there's 4 main components that we're starting to apply to our Intellius brand, which is a whole different model of content, where we have what happens on our site, who do you want to talk to, content, and conditions. And what I would stress is we always start with the who. Every day, every campaign we send, everything we do, it's all about the who first. We always have something that we want to say that we can add in, but we always start with the who. And I think I can kind of skip over this because we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So, oh yeah.
Thanks, Libby. So while we're switching slides here, I just want to introduce the brand that I work for. And out of curiosity, how many people have heard of Grand Circle Travel, Overseas Adventure Travel? Not very many. That's what I thought. So Grand Circle Travel is part of the Grand Circle Corporation, and it's a family of travel companies. Can I have the clicker? Yeah. Thank you. There we go. Oh. All right, good to go. So we operate 3 distinct travel brands, and it was founded in 1958 by a woman named Ethel Andrus, who was the founder of AARP. So we're focused exclusively on international travel for retired Americans. So our base demographic is over 50, but our average age is about 65. The 3 different brands that we operate, we have Grand Circle Cruise Line, which is small ships and river cruises in the European area. We have GCT, Grand Circle Travel, which is more escorted land tours. And then we have Overseas Adventure Travel, which is more small group adventure, soft adventure with a lot more exciting cultural interactions. To give you a little background on who our customer is, so like I mentioned, the average age is about 65. They are people that are seeking new adventures. We refer to them as kind of active retirees. They like to get out there. They like one-to-one interactions, communication, personalized service, both on site and in the marketing efforts. In our marketing efforts, you can't see the rest down there, but the other thing is value is very important to them. So it's important for us to make sure we deliver the value both on site and in our marketing efforts. And then they're also using internet and mobile, and we see that in our results. Talking a little bit about our scale and where we are today. So we send approximately 50 50 million emails a year, and that's to about 350 active profiles. Each week, we're sending out about 30 different campaigns, and I would say half of them are automated, which I'll get into in a minute. We have a 25% open rate across the board, and that's a lot higher when you look at our loyalty base, and a 15% click-to-open rate. So the automated email campaign. So this is something that we've had a lot of success with that we stood up about a year and a half ago. And this is kind of where we want the rest of our email program to go to. So right now we have about 15 different automated email campaigns that are going out based on customer behavior. So based on the amount of time that someone's spending on our website, the products that they're looking at, we trigger them into different email streams based on that. And we've seen some really great success with that. What our challenges are, though, is what do we do with the rest of the marketing effort? So we still have about 15 different emails that are going out on a weekly basis that are really driven by the different brands that we operate. And our challenges there, first of all, we have one customer file. So we have our file of people that have traveled on one or more of the different brands, and all of the different brands are competing for those households on a weekly and daily basis. And we want to make sure we're respecting the customer at the same time. So overall, this is kind of what it looks like on a weekly basis for the emails that aren't automated. It's a very highly manual process to manage the priorities weekly. This is a sample of what one of our weeks look like, and you can see, we have 6 to 7 different emails going out on certain days, and the prioritization of what the household's going to get is very manual, it can get heated. There's a lot of arguments. And that's what my team has to manage on a daily basis. So that's why I'm really excited to hear where we could go and learn from Libby. So I'll kick it back to you,
Okay,
Steve.
great, thank you. That's the job here, is to figure out how and where these programs can overlap and the ways in which your program can learn and implement some of the things that Libby's doing. First of all, I guess, did you have any questions of Libby, of how she's implementing this that might address some of your concerns about where they might overlap?
Sure. I think for me, organizationally, how did this launch? Because we get a lot of pushback in trying new initiatives, and there's always the concern about missed opportunity. We're dealing with inventory issues on ships and certain things like that. It's a lot for people that have been doing things a certain way to change.
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that I think we hear a lot. And there are a couple of key things that happened that enabled us to actually implement this solution. One was we tracked our audiences for about 2 years before we even really started working with technology on how we were going to do it. This started as a ad hoc BA request that my boss would put in every quarter, and she'd say, tell me exactly these people in these groups, and we tracked them for 2 years. So we really understood their behaviors before we really put together the proposal of what we wanted to do. Secondly, Classmates historically has always been on a proprietary email engine, and it was starting to fall apart. We knew, or we would lovingly talk about it as like a big ball of broken glass that was covered in duct tape. And so we knew that we had to build a new system, and it gave us an opportunity to try something very different. And thirdly, we had incredible support from our C-suite. So it actually came down to the point of it was taking too long, and our CEO said, November 1st. Come, whatever you need to do, whatever you need to cut, we are launching something on November 1st. And drawing that line in the sand at first was really scary, because we were like, oh my gosh, how are we going to even remotely do everything? And he said, no. I said, you have to launch something on November 1st. And what we ended up launching with was only 60% of our old program. We launched it to only 10% of our audience, and it enabled us to, first and foremost, launch with the best of the best. It gave us I'll say it, an excuse or an out to cut things so that we didn't have to do everything that everybody wanted. And then we built from there. What we learned is, okay, we thought we covered this area and we totally missed it. Or, wow, we thought that wasn't that important, but gosh, it is just kicking butt, so it needs to move to the top. And then we were able to more smartly grow our program with the things that our audiences really needed, rather than taking, okay, we had all of this over here, and now we need to move all of that over there. There are some things that we haven't even moved yet, and we're okay. We also, because of how stripped down things were, when things didn't go right, and I think we'll talk more about that later, because it definitely, there have been some challenges or hiccups along the way, we were able to more nimbly address them too. So those kind of things we're able to.
And that approach also sort of gave you proof of concept, right? So
Yes.
you could bring to those within the organization who were still doubtful about this evidence of this is how it works.
Exactly, and taking only 10% of our audience, which for 70 million members is still a pretty massive amount of data that we were able to get back pretty quickly. Even with only 60%, we were able to learn kind of what was working, what was not working. And then from November 1st to January 18th at 6 a.m., we went at 100%. So it was like a 4-month process that once we got it kicked off to actually going live, November, December, January, I guess 3-month process, to actually going live, we were able to learn. And it wasn't that we went from 10% to 100%, it was 10, 20, 40, 50, and then 100. So it kind of gave IT and ops the chance to make sure that the systems were all stable too.
And Marlise, similarly, you've got competing KPIs within your organization, competing over how to prioritize. And I'm curious whether this is, first of all, explain how that's working and what your challenges are there, and maybe if there's the way that Libby handled those challenges can apply for you.
Sure, yeah. The competing priorities that we are dealing with on a weekly basis is really, the 3 brands that we operate. We have some owned inventory and ships that we have to fill that space. That's the bottom line. And there's an urgent need to get an email out the door to as many people as possible that have shown any interest in that region. And that's competing with something like a new itinerary that we're launching that we really want all of our travelers to know about, because that's one of the hottest things for our travelers is new places that they can go to. So that's just an example of like those things are competing on a weekly basis for one file, and we have to kind of navigate different personalities within the company to make decisions on, okay, on this week, on this day, we're going to prioritize the ships program. On this week, we're going to prioritize the new products, and it gets very, very cumbersome to manage that. One thing that you mentioned is having the support from the C-suite, and I think we do have that now. We do have the support to kind of move towards behavioral marketing, and we've seen some successes in the automated campaigns that we've stood up. So I'm just trying to figure out how do we get started on taking the manual need to manage the different priorities, and how do we start to move that into more behavioral based?
Yeah, and I'm curious if, Libby, your approach I'm wondering if a more deeply profiled approach actually answers some of this, because one of the things that you've done is prioritize who are your highest value customers, right? And by segmenting out, these are the people who are most responsive, who really are of greatest value to us. If you can take that sort of profiling and bring it into your system, then you could tell those various managers, look, you can hit this group of people all day long with these emails, but they're not going to convert on you. So why waste your breath? Why don't we use that segment elsewhere? Libby, why don't you talk a little bit about how you're identifying high-value users?
Yeah, and like I said, it's based on that one key metric for us, which is last login to the site. Though as we're standing up the Intellius version of this, it's actually based on a slightly different metric. But it's that idea of those people that are highly engaged. It's not a missed opportunity, because those people we can email very regularly, and if we don't email them today, well, we can email them tomorrow, and they're still going to engage. And we let the system kind of take care of, as you fall through and as you become less engaged, the number of campaigns that are for those less engaged segments is much smaller, but they're more bundled together. So there's a lot more, kind of like what we saw with the EA emails, there's a lot more that we pack into those so that we're still making sure we cover all of our bases, but we really focus our time and our energy on those top segments. And so when our conversion team says, hey, we really need to sell more yearbooks, then we can, okay, well, we're just going to throw that at the top of the queue for today, and we're going to help them hit their goals. And we know that all of the things we were expecting to do today, well, that will just go out tomorrow or the next day, and that's okay. And the system kind of makes sure that we don't have things falling on the floor the way they used to.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, how do you manage like fatigue and sending too many emails? Like, where do you draw the threshold if you kind of come from the standpoint of, okay, I'm not going to send it today, but I'll send it tomorrow, because I can see that becoming an endless loop of, okay, they're going to get something every single day, and it's just going to kind of go down the queue.
Yeah, it comes back to a couple different things. One, while we could, in theory, send, if you're in segment 1, an email every single day, we don't have that much content that everybody will qualify for, so that kind of helps with that. And 2, because we tracked these groups for so long, we felt really confident in that kind of frequency level. And you're only in that segment 1 for 14 days, so if you stop engaging, if you say, nope, I'm just not going to click through anymore, then you fall into the next segment, which then pushes out your frequency. So then you get it every 3 days, and then from 3 days you move to 7, and 7 to 14, and 14 to 30. So you start to kind of fall out, and it helps manage that. And I would say that's one of the areas that we're still trying to dial in, even to this day, is what that frequency is.
Let's move towards a wrap by talking about the pain points that both of you are experiencing and whether there are solutions back and forth between the two of you. Marlies, go ahead.
Like I think I mentioned definitely some of the pain points around managing that schedule and the different priorities. Another thing for us is we segment our customers to a gross extent, and I really like the idea of simplifying that in the way that you're describing based on engagement, or in there like segmenting based on recent product interest, how recently you've traveled, how many times you've traveled, what different channels you're getting contacts from, what you're engaging with, and it becomes very, very messy. So I like the idea of maybe going to more of like, okay, let's start simple and segment based on engagement, based on interest, and kind of go from there. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think the follow-on piece is you can have all the complexity you want actually at the content level, and that's where, my team is constantly duking it out for who gets priority 1 and what content and who should get what. But it's more when it comes to how frequently, that kind of top level, we keep that very clean. And just this past week, I had my VP like, well, can't we tweak it just a little? And I was like, no, we need to handle that very, very delicately and protect that, because that is kind of the core of the whole thing. And once you start adding complexity at the top level, then all of the other complexity is just virtually impossible to manage. It's really hard to know who's getting what, when, and where. And so protecting that kind of top level really helps make it so much easier. And I would follow on with the kind of brand and who the competing of priorities from different team members. I would encourage everybody, you got to start somewhere. You will not launch with the perfect thing. We screwed it up. I will be perfectly honest. When we launched, we had phenomenal CTRs, but we were pretty big missing our traffic goals as a whole. And so we had to jump in really quickly and start figuring out, where can we dial up? Who are we missing? Why do we not have enough content? Is one group getting too much and one group not getting enough? And the CTRs being so phenomenal kind of helped us know that we were hitting it when it came to our audience segmentation. The frequencies were really spot on. But when it came to things like, were people getting the same content over and over again, or was there just not enough content yet? That's when we started diving in and figuring out how we could kind of improve from there. So you will screw it up, I promise. But it's okay. It really is okay.
What are some of the pain points of operating the system?
That's a great question. We have a lot of data that we have to deal with every night. The system has to be up and running between, I think it runs from midnight to 2, so that we can get our emails starting to get out the door at about 5 a.m. It's definitely something we have to make sure that we're on top of. And I would say it's still complex in a lot of ways, and getting more out there, just being able to test and iterate. We went from over 150 email campaigns a day to, I think we're down to about 40, but that's still 40 email campaigns that send 365 days a year, and then we layer on top of that kind of special offers and marketing campaigns that sit on top of everything. So there's still a lot that we have to test and optimize, and I would say the other piece is the freshness. Is we still have a lot of content that we have to keep fresh on a regular basis. But then you're spending your time doing content rather than managing complexity, and that's a lot more fun.
Let's open it up to questions from the audience. None. How are you managing the content piece? And how has this approach changed your thinking about content and the amount of content you need to generate? Has it simplified that as well?
It started really simple. The content at first that we went out the gate with was very uniform, I would say, and now we're starting to realize that maybe too much of it looks too much the same, so we're starting to try to break the shells a little bit so that things feel different, look different, and get different engagement. My team spends a lot of time with that, and there's a balance there between trying to have things that are repeatable. We have what we call content blocks that can be used and applied in many different emails, but then if you go too far with that, then the notification that somebody got yesterday looks very similar to the summary that they're going to get next week, and so how do we start to break those molds apart a little bit as well? And make it feel not all the same. So I have a team of 3 marketing managers, and that's what they spend their whole time doing, is that content. We actually, the other person on our team, to kind of how we manage the queue and what content gets prioritized, we hired somebody with a retail background, and she used to be a demand planner for Eddie Bauer. And now she is basically an email demand planner, because she looks at our program as, we have all this inventory, how should I get this inventory out every day? And that has been a huge asset for us, because she has that eye towards, well, this audience really engages with this piece of content, but this audience really engages with that piece of content, so we can prioritize the queues differently for different audiences, which is a really helpful tool as well.
Libby, Marlise, thanks very much for trying this out. I appreciate it. And we're going to extend this one. This topic will have a roundtable at it in about half an hour. New toys and tricks that are starting to invade the email inbox. We wanted to discuss, where are they working? Are they working? What are we learning just really a few months into seeing these features explode? Let me bring up Jess Nelson, who is the editor. Where is Jess? There she is, and her panel, to discuss what they're finding in these first few months of using some of the new toys and gadgets that are available to you in email. Jess is the editor of and chief reporter for our Email Marketing Daily at MediaPost. So please welcome Jess and her panel.
You're on this one. No, sit next to it.
We're all friends here.
Anyway, thank you. I want to introduce both of my panelists, Lauren and Andrew. I'll let you guys introduce yourself and tell a little bit more about what you do. I'm really excited to talk about how to make email more engaging.
Sure. Hi, I'm Lauren Gentile. I lead Epsilon's digital design team. So for us, that means we get to focus on email almost 95% of the time. We do some digital experience, but mostly email creative. So we're a team of copywriters and art directors, creative directors, and a lot of what we're doing, I'm excited to talk about today, which is driving innovation in the channel and looking for opportunities to embed some new functionality in the creative experience. And I know when we prepped, Andrew and I had some differing opinions a little bit on whether or not it's worth it. So I'm excited to talk about that today.
Ahoy, email swashbucklers and scallywags.
Throw a gold coin. Just kidding.
I'm Andrew Norris. I am a senior communication strategist at WebMD. Primarily my role now is I work with some of our clients to help promote our suite of wellness products and tools to their either customers or members or employees, depending how the business group shakes out. And prior to WebMD, I was managing the Nautilus Bowflex direct-to-consumer email and affiliate programs.
Mm-hmm. So to get us started, I actually looked up an old movable ink study on the average read rate on emails, and the majority of emails are only read between 0 and 3 seconds, which, if you consider the average American reads about 250 to 300 words per minute, you're looking at, you have about 12 words to capture somebody's attention in the inbox before they're going to move on to something else. As we all know, it's a very, very competitive place for marketers. I mean, I think email is ubiquitous. We all have, a deluge of emails daily. So my question to you guys to start us off is just written content in email enough to capture somebody's attention?
I think it depends on the goal of the campaign. So I know when we work with a lot of our retail clients, we're always looking for ways to drive the click to purchase, right? Because that's their objective and ultimately that's their goal. But we also work with a lot of financial clients, and the goal is different there. And even with insurance clients, oftentimes we find that embedding more messaging in those types of campaigns, whether it is a newsletter or another type of communication, is actually giving them more relevant content in the inbox. There might not even be a strong and compelling call to action because everything we need to give them is in the content, in the creative message. So I think it does differ based on industry and also the campaign objective. But when we talk about, trying to drive engagement in email, yes, I think concise copy, especially for those brands that are looking to drive an immediate action into obviously their site or their social channel. Less can be more, and looking for ways to use innovation, animation, live content to deliver some of that is a very effective tactic.
Yeah, from the health and wellness and health and fitness space, content's extremely important because you always hear about, oh, I have one of those. It's sitting in my basement as a coat hanger. So in this space, content's extremely important because you have to be the driving force to motivate people to take actions in health and fitness and wellness. So I think it has to be delivered, if you can find an interesting way to deliver it, maybe, put a little flair to an email via gift. But this is kind of where we disagreed as a brand marketer where, driving a large revenue program with little resources, you have to be conscious of how you spend your budget. So for me, especially at Bowflex, gifts were huge. They worked awesome, but I could never justify the spend to go into video. Not that I'm opposed to it. I've talked to some smart people here, Lauren herself, who's changing my opinion of things. But to get back to the point, content I think is the driving force for the consumer.
Yeah, no, Andrew, I think you kind of jumped the gun on my next question. I wanted to talk about, kind of video, and I think content marketing has really expanded beyond just writing, obviously now. There's video, there's photography, there's, social media. So I'm kind of curious as to when we look at making email more engaging and more interactive and including audio or video, is making it short better? Or, I've gotten emails where they want me to watch a 5-minute video, and I'm not going to do that. Right. So.
And this is kind of where I struggle with it because I have a kind of traditional advertising background. So I'm a firm believer you only have 3 seconds to capture people's attention. So for me, and the struggle with a video or an audio is professionally, I don't really expect my consumers to spend that much time with it. So if you could show them a quick GIF or even the old image with a play button that gets them right through to the website where that seamless is going to be seamless and you don't have to kind of worry about maybe any of the tech issues that are going to affect that consumer experience. That's kind of personally and professionally where I tend to have my programs go.
Yeah, just to add on that, I mean, video and email is obviously not necessarily new, but I think with the increased support, especially, with iOS 10 launching last year, HTML5 is supported again. So if you have a heavy subscriber base that's, in leveraging that email client, then obviously, you could look to try to deliver that more frequently. But I think, again, it goes back to the goal, right? Like a static image with a play button is still an effective way to, drive engagement, and then you can enhance it through an animation. So maybe you're just delivering like a very short clip to your point, and then there is the full embedded experience, and you can deliver that obviously through live content. And we've done that today with a lot of brands that we work with, and we have found that it does increase engagement. Even putting the word video like in your subject lines is a really effective tactic to your site.
Really resources. I've spoken with a lot of people who really want to make their email campaigns more interactive and make them more engaging and incorporate all of these new storytelling techniques. But because there's so much to do and so much possibility, I think it can get really, really overwhelming. Like, where do you go? So Lauren, I know earlier you were talking about how you put together kind of modular email templates, which then Electronic Arts was talking about earlier, about one email template that can have, billions of possible permutations. And I think that's kind of a really handy tactic just to make this process easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was a really great presentation, especially with the visuals that sort of supported how it works. So at Epsilon, we kind of call that approach to email in the template system an expandable template system, because for us, we're really creating a system of modules that is so flexible that we can accommodate all of the different possible pieces of content, different branding applications, and be able to deliver something really quickly. And we can craft messaging based on segment, or even one-to-one where that content or data exists. And Christine was up here earlier talking about the Good Morning Football email, which is a daily email that goes out, and that is built with a template system. And we have the opportunity to put some really rich experiences in there with live content. So we have a ticker in that email campaign that is scraping content off the site, and we're able to do something with Twitter or Instagram where we have that. So we've sort of created a templated system that has that live content or even that innovation baked into it. Mm-hmm. And if it is something that you're looking to sort of step into, I think that if you have a program that is more daily or even triggered like that, where you can sort of create it once and use it again over time, then it's probably worth the investment. Whereas a one-off promotional email could be a much bigger investment cost-wise, but also just time-wise to getting that produced. So I think you have to kind of consider what campaign types you'd be putting it in, and how you want to, look at your program and make that impact.
Yeah, I can touch on the modular templates too, because I rolled one out a few years ago at Bowflex. And, again, coming back to the limited resources, the great part about a modular template is you don't have to spend the designer's time coding a new template for every single email. You basically, I like to say they're plug and play. You can strip what you need, and then basically you're giving your design team, hey, I just need an image with this dimensions. Hey, copywriters, I only need this many characters. And you kind of streamline that whole design process. And, when you're driving revenue all day long, it helps to kind of have efficiencies wherever you can. And on the same note, another thing would be like any sort of data tools. I don't have a great example, but anything that helps to either simplify testing or visualize data better and make it more actionable, for not having a big analyst team, those kind of tools are definitely helpful as well.
Mm-hmm. So I'm actually a big geography nerd, so I really appreciate when I get emails that incorporate really kind of like geo-targeted information, right? So I'm from Oakland. I'm really excited for Game 1 of the NBA Finals tonight. I don't want to get a Cleveland Cavaliers email, right? So kind of if you could maybe talk a little bit about really kind of case examples of how making geo-targeting and incorporating that in email campaigns can boost the effectiveness by making it more relevant to where people live.
Yeah, I have an example on that. It's still geo-targeting, slightly different than what you just said though. The Cracker Barrel, so last summer they were looking at launching or bringing back a menu item. It was called Campfire Meals, and they came to Epsilon agency practice, and the agency put together a campaign. It was a very humorous, viral campaign, video content around the worst camper in the world. So it was fun and clever, and it was used in other channels, but for email, they wanted to figure out a way to promote this campaign. And so we were able to do some dedicated campaigns, but it's summertime, people are road tripping. We were able to do some targeting with our data to identify those customers and segments that we wanted to reach out to. But not everybody knows, especially when you're traveling, right? Like, where is the nearest Cracker Barrel, So we were looking at ways to put in and use geo-targeting to identify, the nearest location when you opened your email. We also did include the video content, and we saw that those email campaigns were beating the benchmarks that the Cracker Barrel had from the previous time of year. We were looking at it year over year based on engagement in that channel and industry. So that was, one way to think about that, and it was not necessarily trying to drive a purchase, it was trying to drive them to the location, because that really is where they would ultimately dine and then, visit the general store that they have on site as well.
Yeah, personally, I haven't had a lot of experience with geotargeting because the brands I've worked for aren't regional specific, but as a consumer of email, I will say I'm a big snowboarder, and I got a lot of emails from different mountains, and I love when they're including, what the weather is, and even some general companies that are companies that kind of show you all the mountains. They do a lot of kind of weather-based geo-targeting to show you, hey, what's going on, in Colorado, what's going on in Oregon, so.
Cool. I also think just in terms of traffic, driving someone to an event, getting an email ahead of time saying, hey, you might want to leave 20 minutes earlier because traffic's really bad today. And I love, Lauren, when you were talking about actually being able to drive someone to the actual store, which I think is something that everyone at the end of the day, we want to combine digital as well as in-person experiences as marketers.
Yeah, I think the geo-targeting too is interesting, like the driving. BP is another brand that we work with, and we work on their loyalty program, Drivers Rewards. And so one of the things we're trying to do as well with weather is identify tips to serve, based on what the weather might be, what the driving conditions are, and as another piece of content for the program to try to look at ways to, continually engage with the customer. And if we're giving them a statement email, that it has a richer experience than just the savings at the pump. And so you can kind of identify those content sources, and then the opportunity through a templated environment to easily implement that level of detail and content in the program.
I think there's kind of an interesting dichotomy when we're talking about incorporating these new tech and storytelling techniques into email, because the machines can make email more relevant by making it more personalized and data-driven. At the same time, though, because it's being run more and more by machines, I think that marketers need to ensure that the machines are still making it a personalized experience, right? So my question is tying to, our theme for the conference is, even amidst all these different kind of technologies and machines, how do you still make sure that the customer comes first and that you're making sure you're making these engaging emails campaigns successful, right?
Again, I'll bring it back to content, but I think these tools can just give you so much better insight into what your customers are doing. It allows you to just craft better content based on the tools. Another thing is a tool is a tool, right? You have to use it, and you have to, monitor it, because how many people set up triggered programs, we all do it, and you just forget about them. So it's about monitoring the technology and testing and optimizing it as you get more insights and learn more about them. But you basically, you have to work with the tool. You can't expect the tool to solve something because you are the user of it.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about machine and machine learning, and again, not necessarily new topic, but a bit newer to the channel, is, how can we leverage the machine to sort of influence the content that we're putting in the email, and it becomes less about the design and more about content and what is the right opportunity. I thought earlier there was some good conversation around, just because we know that doesn't mean we have to put it in every single message. And so really identifying strategically, like, what is the right point in that life cycle to sort of leverage that data point and to identify, the spot to insert that. And then there is this whole emerging kind of trend as well around, what is the content that they're engaging with, the content that the machine is telling us to serve them, and the content that they're engaging with tell us about the consumer, that can then begin to build a bigger profile on them that we can put back in the machine. And over time, we can continue to just get smarter with our marketing efforts. And so I think that as we kind of move into even 2018 and beyond, that's going to be just an even, hotter topic that we all continue to, as marketers and designers, try to identify, how can we leverage all of this content and quickly be able to respond to it and put it into an email program.
And speaking of 2018 and the future, before I kind of open up to questions, I did want to talk to you about if there were any new engaging technologies that you're keeping an eye on, that you've noted in the news and you've liked to incorporate in future campaigns?
So I'm going to give two. One's a website resource that I really like, and one is a product that I just like. I have no experience with it. There's no, nobody's paying me to give these endorsements. This is just, again, as a consumer of email. As a product, Adobe Campaign looks awesome as a customer profiling tool. That's something I definitely, in sometime in the future, like to check out a little bit more. And my favorite site for what's new in email and coding is freshinbox.com. It's Justin Koo, and he always has, if you want to know like what the true definition of a kinetic email is compared to an interactive email, go there and he'll learn you on that. So it's those are my two kind of.
Yeah, he's a great resource. I think that what you just touched on is really something that we're still seeing as an emerging trend. It was interesting to note on the slide earlier, I don't know the exact language that was used, it was sort of what people are moving away from, but also contradicting what everyone is still talking about. And you know, I think that it is not for everyone, but there's certainly opportunities, especially if you have email clients that you know your subscribers are using where the support is. So iOS, Apple Mail, Gmail now with the support of responsive design, there are certain versions that will also support things like hamburger menus in your header. So on mobile you can offer you know another element of navigation. Doing some interactive elements so that there's maybe an interactive carousel. I still find that is really an interesting way to sort of take what is typically website behavior and begin to embed it into the inbox and an experience that will continue to hopefully engage the subscriber. The only thing you know that I would say and caution on is, you know, oftentimes since it still is really new, a lot of people don't know that it's there. And my team and I, we were just looking at an email last week, and I think it was from Starbucks, and they did something in their program with some, like a hover state on an image, and we found it on accident. Like we didn't know that it was there because we weren't looking for it. There wasn't any sort of instruction or element inside the creative that said like, oh, hover on this and we'll tell you the nutrition information. And so I think that was almost an area when we talk about interactivity or like emerging trends, we have to remember that, you know, we might all understand, you know, how this works or what the impact is, but for our subscribers, we have to maybe give them some education or like a little hint as to what we want them to do to sort of train them to use the technology in that way.
And just direct their action. Wanted to open up if anyone has any questions for our panelists.
Hang on. Come.
Hey, I'm Matt Casson at Barnes & Noble, and we've definitely been experimenting with the adaptive content, you know, kinetic, you know, emails as well. And one thing I'm curious, maybe for you guys or for other retailers here, but in particular with geo-targeting, I found that it pinpoints a customer not to the exact location. If you're trying to deliver content based on where a customer opens the email, but to I think it's a latitude, longitude, or sort of an area, which is good if you're doing maybe generalized content like, oh, you're in the Colorado area, there's skeet mountains around you. But if you're a retailer with, say, New York City with, 5, 10 different stores, and you're sitting there in Penn Station being shown a store in the Bronx when there's a store down the block from you, that's a really tricky thing we're looking to avoid, yet we really want to be able to do that. And I'm wondering if anyone has had success finding, a way to do that with the geo-targeting approach.
Matt, I'll just give a short answer, but certainly you could open it up to the room as well. I think there's a way to do that where you can almost identify the nearest stores. So I mean, maybe you're not pinpointing just one. We work with a couple retail brands that I think use that approach as well because they are in a dense area, and there could be a way to sort of identify, pinpoint them on the map, or maybe you just want to name the mall or the location that they're in. And so that could be a strategy that you guys test into. Like, does that help without sort of alienating them if you happen to send them the store that they're not likely to shop at?
And I think the key here, would be making sure that the emails are dynamic and they're being opened. I mean, the content's populating at the moment the email is opened as opposed to when it's sent. So in terms of geo-targeting, you know, I'm opening my email, say Manhattan, even though I may normally live in the Bronx. And the email is recognizing that I'm now in Manhattan as I'm opening this email at this very moment, so it's going to populate the nearest store to where I am at that moment that I'm engaging with the email.
We got one up here.
Over here.
Comment to the question.
Yes, this is Justin at LiveClicker. I actually have a precise answer to that question. So we'll represent all the real-time personalization vendors in the room today. It's only possible to accurately geo-target someone that's opening an email to about 85, maybe 90% accuracy within about a 20-mile radius. It's just an inherent limitation of IP geo-targeting. So the approach of showing nearest stores is the best approach. Show multiple, not just the closest, because it's just an inherent limitation of the technology. There is something else which we've seen work, which is basically to predict for Gmail openers their most likely location based on past opens. So some of you may be aware there's a limitation with Gmail. Google uses an image proxy server in Mountain View. So when serving geo-targeted content at open time, it basically is not possible to do that for Gmail openers that are opening using the Gmail web app or the Gmail mobile app. However, most Gmail openers open using multiple mail clients. For example, if you use Gmail, you might open sometimes your Gmail using your iPhone native client, or you might open it in Outlook, or you might open it using your Android native client. So you can at open time, even if you're not able to geo-target based on someone opening in Gmail web app or Gmail mobile app, you can look historically at where that Gmail opener is open. You can attempt to geo-target that way too.
Actually, I wanted to draft off of that point and ask the question of the panel and anybody else in the room, whether for some of these new approaches, including animation and embedded video, if mobile is performing differently from desktop in terms of responsiveness, since on mobile email clients, it is essentially making the email itself into the full screen website experience. It's already doing that for you, so almost inviting you to engage it that way in a way that a typical desktop client doesn't.
From a brand perspective, I'd answer that question is it just depends on what your what your audience does, if they're if they're high percentage of mobile or desktop, but also what devices are they using in between the web apps and everything else on iOS. So like kinetic email, from my understanding of it, it's if you have a high percentage of iOS users, it's probably a great technique because it's going to render across all your devices, but if it's really low adoption, then it probably doesn't make sense. So I think it all comes down to your program, what people are engaging on to make those decisions about how, from the brand's perspective, about how to spend that budget if you're going to get something like that done.
Yeah, exactly. And you can do some device targeting, right? So you can certainly isolate some of this so that you would send it only to those that are opening on a mobile. But yes, I mean, I think that certain things are only going to be supported, or there's going to be a better experience on mobile, then you design for that and consider what that desktop experience.
But are we seeing any evidence of increased responsiveness on mobile to some of these?
Yes. So certainly things that are supported with responsive design, like the hamburger menu that I was mentioning, we're doing that in a lot of our client emails today. And that really is just another element of navigation in an email campaign, but that header space of the email is so important, and it does drive additional engagement for us on a mobile. So that is one area that we can say for certainty is worth it and working in mobile.
I wanted to ask about audio. Any experimentation or experience with audio in the inbox? My speakers woke up the other day for the first time, and it was jarring.
I was going to say, I don't think that that it really is going to ever be necessarily like a best practice. I think that it is, a lot of people have their volume turned off, number one, and then if they don't, they're not expecting that. So we have delivered HTML5 and email for some clients, but we are not looking at including audio with with that, we want to try to really look at ways that we can use video without having to rely on the audio component of it, because I just don't feel like that it is an effective way to, in the email, to
So you could port disciplines from, say, the social feed that we're already seeing, like audio off, and certain disciplines of how to use an autoplay video that includes, say, headlines that sort of communicate without the audio channel.
right.
All right, we're going to move this to our roundtable discussions. Jess, Lauren, and Andrew, thanks very much. And we're going to move to our roundtables. We have 4 of them this morning. First is Mastering the ID Graph with Katie Lay. Where do we have that one? Katie, where are you? Katie's, okay, stay there. We'll bring it to you. We'll bring the table to you. Customer First Messaging with Libby.
Hey, Libby, back in this corner.
Back here by Libby. Expanding Your Email List with Jordan Cohen, CMO of Fluent. Jordan, where are you?
Right here. We'll put Jordan in the back corner.
Okay.
Back corner. Yep. We can't go right here. You have to go back here.
And the extension of this panel, Do the New Toys of Email Storytelling Work? And that's with Bridget Darling, who's the marketing manager at Adobe. Bridget, where are you?
Bridget, up front, far corner.
Okay. So grab some coffee. We'll expand the table.